Hello humans, and welcome to the very first episode of the Housepod. Today we are launching this, a brand new podcast affiliated with the House, an online house church. The Housepod is going to explore the more practical or applied sides of faith, and how faith and theology plays out in relationships and community matters. In each episode, we'll be exploring a different topic for that day. Topics will draw from practical issues within faith communities, such as mental health, interpersonal development, relationship dynamics, sociological and cultural factors, social justice issues, activism, anti-racism, and how all these things link and interact with theology and faith. As we launch into our first episode, allow me to briefly introduce myself and who we are. My name is Natalie Kendel. I am a theologian and pastor at the House, and I am also the director and head lecturer at Citeo School of Theology. I have an MA and BA certificate in theology. I have been a singer-songwriter and producer for the past 2 decades, and I also have a background as a writer. No doubt you'll learn more about me in time as we share more episodes and delve into various topics and stories. And the House is an online house church, the official channel of which you're currently listening. As mentioned, in each Housepod episode we'll be exploring a different topic for that day. Some days we'll have guests on to chat with us on a matter they have experience or an educational background in. Some days we'll try new and different segments. We will aim to always be as informed and responsible about what we share as possible. We also plan on occasion to open up the floor to you, the listeners, for you to write in questions, comments, messages, ways for you to interact with us. So keep your ears open for when we invite participation, and we might just share your contribution on one of our episodes. But without further ado, let's dive right into our topic for today. Today's episode is titled, When Old Men Plant Trees. There is an ancient Greek proverb which goes, "Society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they will never sit in." The essence of this saying concerns looking beyond one's own time. It commends the value of working towards a goal you might not see the completion of, but which is an investment in the future. Now that may sound very noble and admirable. It may sound like an ideal we should all be striving towards. But the reality is this type of long-term investment and thinking isn't really in harmony with how Western society is built or what it expects from us. A successful project or investment, even a life that is considered successful, is often considered so only when we can produce evidence of the quick reward, the immediate win, easy demonstrable results. And so many of us, whether in a professional or personal capacity, prefer to pick projects we know we can complete, we know we can win at and reap the rewards of. These projects range from work projects to people. We'd rather commit to something we are guaranteed to benefit from and to have our contributions acknowledged within our own lifetime, and even more preferably before the week runs out. And beyond external expectations, there is, of course, a satisfaction which comes with seeing one's work finished and completing something. Another factor that bloats this particular beast is that there tends to be far more praise given to those who can easily demonstrate the fruits of their labour, sometimes even when those fruits are insignificant or merely a token. But we habitually reward those who clearly point to what they've achieved. We reward them with promotions, validation, attention, authority, money, autonomy. You can probably think of many more ways, but we assign such people titles and leadership positions regarding them as accomplished. And so naturally most people choose the short term over playing the long game. One area we find a lot of this sort of short-sighted decision-making playing out is within the political sphere. This short-sightedness is common to see among those in political or administrative office. The LSE, otherwise known as the London School of Economics and Political Science, runs an online blog called the British Politics and Policy Blog, or the BPP. This is an academic blog that aims to increase the public's understanding of British politics and policy by providing informed commentary and research. On the BPP website, there is an article by Ian Marsh, who is a visiting professor at the Crawford School at the Australian National University. In 2013, Marsh wrote an article titled "How Contemporary Politics Became Trapped in the Short Term and Whether It Can Be Repaired." In his article, Marsh argues that policy convergence, cynical marketing strategies, and the demise of party organizations have destroyed the infrastructures that once provided a platform for longer-term policy debates. In other words, contemporary politics is trapped in short-termism. He and a wide literature attest to that the public disenchantment with contemporary democracy can't be solved the way many assume it can, because most efforts to improve on Western political systems channel its attention towards, will focus on, party reform or voting system change. And although arguably both are desirable, they don't get to the heart of the problem. The heart of the problem is the short-term cage in which contemporary politics is trapped. An example of British politicians demonstrating short-sightedness, or policy myopia, can be seen in how successive governments have handled public services, notably in the realm of capital investment. Since the 2010s, the UK government has repeatedly prioritised short-term spending over long-term investments, leading to deteriorating infrastructure across sectors like health and education. For instance, the chronic underinvestment in schools has resulted in deteriorating conditions, while the NHS struggles with outdated technology and neglected needs. Policy decisions reflect a preference for addressing immediate budget constraints rather than investing in improvements that would enhance service productivity in the future. Now, although this massively upsets many British citizens, there is also this strange acceptance of the fact. This is just how politics works. This is just how politicians work. The short-sightedness in politics is connected to pressures of short electoral cycles, where politicians focus on quick wins to appeal to voters rather than addressing long-term structural challenges. This approach leads to a cycle where public services fall into crisis, forcing governments to focus on managing the immediate fallout instead of implementing sustainable solutions. For instance, in the UK, capital spending in public services between 2011 and 2018 never surpassed 2007-2008 levels, resulting in crumbling infrastructure and lowest service quality. Another instance of short-term political decision-making is seen in how austerity measures are strategically timed in relation to elections. And for those who might not know what austerity measures refers to, it describes a set of economic policies that usually consist of tax increases, spending cuts, or a combination of the two. Austerity measures are used by governments to reduce budget deficits and can in principle be used at any time where there is concern or feigned concern about government expenditure exceeding government revenues. Now, research by, among others, Cambridge Core and published by Cambridge University Press shows that governments often implement harsh fiscal policies early in their term to ensure they don't alienate voters later on, when it's closer to the next election, further demonstrating how electoral cycles shape short-term thinking at the expense of long-term well-being. In both cases, the need to appease voters and manage news cycles overrides the pursuit of policies that would benefit the country in the long run, thus illustrating the challenges of policy myopia in UK governance. If you're interested in having a look at any of the sources for this information, you can find them in the description box below. The bottom line is, a politician is voted into a role for a limited period of time, and they know there will be pressure on them to demonstrate what they have achieved during their tenure. But more importantly, they are focused on the next election, on popularity, on public opinion, on finding a way of getting people to vote for them again, on immediate reward and personal reward. And so this pressure to both implement observable results, but those results also need to happen quickly and be simple enough for the perceived half-listening electorate to grasp and appreciate. And of course, all this is coupled with their desire to leave behind a tangible personal legacy, and that makes picking easy win causes likely. Meaning that while in a position of influence, the politician will mainly focus on devoting themselves to projects that will earn them political points, and any long-term issues are easier to hand off to the next guy, thus resulting in poor handoffs, lack of cohesive continuity, and the diminished likelihood of truly needed systemic changes being implemented due to them taking more than an elected term to come to full fruition. Now, we've talked a bit about short-sightedness among politicians, but let us turn our attention now to church administration, or church politics, because there is not the big gap between the two. One simply wears the mask of religion and higher calling. If you've ever attended a church conference session, or a union session, a general conference session, or any kind of get-together that you have in your church denominations or groups, in which the administrative or director positions are being discussed and voted on, I'd invite you to cast your mind back to those days and ask yourself some questions. What was the atmosphere like? What was the actual spirit in that place? Not what everyone said it should be, or what everyone prayed it would be, or pretended it to be. What was the actual focus on? Where were people's minds bent? What were their hearts and mouths full of? What was the undercurrent? The desire bubbling underneath the public debates and private conversations held out in the dark corners of the lobby. You'll never see less humility or more ego trying to disguise itself as humility than at church voting sessions. Can you see some similarities between the behavior and focus we described in short-sighted politicians and the spirit of those church sessions? Like those in government, a short-term thinking is all too common among church administrators as well. For they too are in office for a limited period of time. Some elected to church offices view their service in a position as being merely a stepping stone to a higher, more quote-unquote prestigious position. Personal ambition, coveted titles, personal legacy hunting, molding others' perception of yourself, and the drive to climb the imagined ladder can cause us all to invest more in appearing as though we're leading at the cost of actually leading. And this problem, which sits at the heart of things, has far-reaching and disastrous repercussions. It's not a harmless matter of, oh, well, you know Pastor so-and-so. He's always wanted the top job and he's been lobbying for himself over the past months. But he's not a bad sort of fellow. He's just a touch ambitious. But when administrators, directors, and leaders choose short-sighted leadership, they also will irrefutably fail, and in fact betray those who are suffering from systemic issues in organized religion. Now, why is this the case? Because those who are in need of advocacy, representation, and support are often oppressed by systemic issues. And systemic issues take longer time and effort to address and combat. They cannot be helped by a director or administrator who throws together some last-minute plan to patch things over and win a few political points to secure himself the next elected position. Thus, these systemic issues are rarely addressed thoroughly, responsibly, or improved upon by the very people who are uniquely empowered to assert the necessary influence to do so. I mentioned earlier that the similarity between government politicians and church politicians is remarkable. But not only are their choices, focus, and methods similar, the people they let down also tend to belong to the same groups. A politician isn't going to rise in power by advocating for immigrants. He isn't going to win by starting a process that will end homelessness in 20 years. She isn't going to become the minister of whatever if she spends her time in office focusing on the refugee crisis, or on real drastic environmental change, or on ending big oil, or stopping the vicious but normalized alcohol industry, on children's mental health, real reform in addiction education and treatment, marginalized women, the poor, the disabled, the sick, those who suffer from systemic racism in this country. When was the last time you heard a general conference president say, "We're going to invest in a serious, long-term strategy of challenging and unlearning white supremacist ideas and biblical interpretation in our official theology, and it will be led by people of color"? When was the last time the director of a teens department put in place a long-term strategy for increasing trauma awareness in church leadership and educating on the connection trauma has with addiction, and putting in place serious, responsible support systems to meet this need? When was the last time church leadership said, "We're going to go after this systemic injustice within our organization, and not just for a term, we're making it policy, and we're going after it until it's eradicated"? When was the last time church leadership became serious about a long-term commitment to addressing and applying real consequence to the rampant misogyny in church culture? It's the same groups that get burnt again and again, who are forgotten and neglected and marginalized in government and in church organizations. And it just so happens to be these very groups that Jesus spent most time with, focused his ministry on. These groups are the ones burnt repeatedly because their woes stem from bigger problems that can be solved by half-hearted, uninformed strategies driven by vote-grabbing or last-minute shows of concern by a pastor who wants to be the next church president or director of a department. We're talking about systemic issues within the government, within society, within a church organization. And grappling and working to help those kinds of problems isn't sexy. It's not fun. It's not easy. It won't make for a quick blurb in your church's monthly magazine, nor will it make the paragraph where you sum up your achievements in your yearly departmental report. A significant problem with only sticking to easy-win, short-term projects is that one may fail to invest in the future. Why? Because some things take more than a person's lifetime to come to be realized. When we only think in terms of our time, we become short-sighted, self-centered, and narrow-minded. In other words, we lose vision. When this lack of vision is practiced by leaders, it feeds into a corporate culture which can make an organization stale and perpetually bogged down by politics. Obsessing over personal legacy stands in the way of us effectively passing the torch to those who come after us. After all, why would we set up things so as to help the next guy succeed if we're more concerned about looking good ourselves? Focusing on making a name for ourselves is done at the cost of effectual stewardship, because being a good leader entails having the courage to see beyond one's own time in office. Now, the word stewardship is thrown around a lot in church settings, but the true meaning of it is often lost. It simply means to look after something, or to take care of it. Something is your responsibility, in your charge, and how you treat and nurture and feed it will determine if you are a good steward or not. Now, this concept of stewardship is as old as humanity itself. In Eden, humanity's first home, the two first human beings were given earth and everything on this planet as a gift, for them to be caretakers of, to take responsibility for, to care for, to steward. How we care for the things and people we're responsible for sits at the core and the heart of human purpose and meaning. And so it's not merely some abstract concept which mainly concerns money, balances and checks and spreadsheets. Stewardship is about our personal power and the responsibility which comes with it. With great power comes great responsibility is a proverb which was popularized by Spider-Man in Marvel comics, films, and related media, appearing originally in a comic from 1962. It echoed a similar idea to the 1st century BC parable of the sword of Damocles and the medieval principle of noblesse oblige, that power cannot simply be enjoyed for its privilege alone, but necessarily makes its holder morally responsible both for what they choose to do with it and what they fail to do with it. But as we said, when anyone in church leadership positions or administration focuses on personal legacy hunting and vote winning and public approval, instead of doing the unappreciated work that comes with long-term investment, vision dies. Vision is lost. All that's left is the next election, the next church paper article, the next photo opportunity. A way to combat one's inner pull towards personal legacy hunting is by shifting one's focus from personal power to empowering others. This is not some modern notion. It's not an answer pulled from thin air. It's the way that's ancient, the way as old as humanity itself, and older still. Giving power away, empowering others, this is how God ushers the first woman and the first man into existence, into the world. This all-powerful God, whom we read all about in Genesis 1 and 2, how he creates the world by merely speaking it into existence. What immense power! This God who makes light out of nothing, the burning suns in the dark sky, the ocean now teeming with giants, the ground bursting with living creatures, a spinning planet hurtling through space, kept in perfect balance and painted by a genius in engineering and beauty. And what does this all-powerful genius do? Genesis 1 from verse 26, he gives it away. Then God said, "Let us make humankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they will rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. So that they may not harm, not hurt, not force, they may care for all of this." Verse 29, then God said, "I give you." I give you. Adam and Eve have just come to life. They've done nothing to earn such a gift. They have not proven themselves capable or somehow deserving of this free, unbelievable power. But God says, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food. And to all the beasts of the earth and all the birds in the sky and all the creatures that move along the ground, everything that has the breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food. And it was so. These are the words which ring through the dawn of humankind. I give you power. I empower you. You go rule. You be the caretakers, the stewards, the king and queen of a planet. At the beginning of the world, we find a God who gives away power. And so no, empowering other people is not a modern concept. It is a very, very old idea. And it is something which sits at the heart of how God rules and what we might conclude about his character. And if humanity is made as some sort of image or reflection of God, we might also conclude that this sits at the heart of what being human is supposed to be like. a way to combat one's inner pull towards personal legacy hunting and the death of vision and integrity and character which comes with it, is by shifting one's focus from personal power to the empowering of others. When we give power away, we fight in ourselves the pull to jealousy, possessiveness, and obsessing over power. Not only that, but we also come into greater harmony with the original human purpose and vocation, the way we were created that would bring us joy and meaning and peace. Practical ways that we can give away power is by delegating, training others, mentoring, and making sure that we're good, wise, and effective mentors. This isn't about having little disciples following you around and trying to be little versions of you. By supporting and investing in other people's journeys and growth, relinquishing control over others' faith journeys, by succession planning, and by mindfully beginning projects we know we won't reap the rewards of. This isn't about being ineffective. It's about having a bigger picture of things that aren't contained in the narrow shell of our own ego and time. Paul wrote about the importance of having a greater vision, stretching beyond one's own personal ministry. He touches on this when describing his own work and that of his colleagues. He wrote to a faith group, "I planted the seed, Apollos watered it, but God has been making it grow. So neither the one who plants nor the one who waters is anything, but only God who makes things grow. The one who plants and the one who waters have one purpose, and they will each be rewarded according to their own labor. For we are co-workers in God's service. You are God's field, God's building." 1 Corinthians 3, 6-9. Even Paul, the much revered Paul, is aware that he is but a part of the puzzle. He is part of the process of inspiring this faith community to form. He can't take credit for it, and it will grow beyond him, because it's not about him. He acknowledges how Apollos, another person ministering to the same group, has then taken the baton and continued the work, but that ultimately none of it would have worked or grown if it depended entirely on their efforts. God makes good things grow. Personal legacy hunting is futile. Anyone who truly understands ministry knows this. Jesus echoed similar thoughts to his disciples in John 4:37-38. Thus the saying, "One sows and another reaps," is true. I sent you to reap what you have not worked for. Others have done the hard work, and you have reaped the benefits of their reward. Believing in, investing in, things beyond one's own time is intrinsically interwoven with faith itself and the mission of God. The author of Hebrews opens chapter 11 with the statement, "Now faith is confidence in what we hope for, and assurance about what we do not see. This is what the ancients were commended for." And then the author dives into example after example of these ancient people who had faith in the Bible and were commended for it. Abel, Enoch, Noah, Abraham, Sarah, Rahab. And then the author writes in verse 13, all these people were still living by faith when they died. They did not receive the things promised. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance, admitting that they were foreigners and strangers on earth. And this is echoed again in verse 39. These were all commended for their faith, yet none of them received what had been promised, since God had planned something better for us, so that only together with us would they be made complete. In other words, the author is talking about continuity and passing things to the next person and to the next. Long-term vision, spanning generations, a partnership between the ancient Enoch and Abraham and Rahab, partnering with Paul and Apollos and Priscilla. They are, across time, weaving together participation in the mission and a belief in something God is doing, a grand narrative of which we are all a part of. And notice, all these people who were commended for their faith did not see the completion, the fulfillment of God's full promise in their lifetime. It says they welcomed his promises from a distance, glimpsing a future through the fog of time, and yet decided to be a part of something they wouldn't see the completion of. But they believed in a cause, in a God who is on a quest to liberate a self-destructing human race and to restore a planet being destroyed by the very ones to whom it was given to be taken care of. Now, faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. Replacing short-sightedness with long vision and long-term investment is living out faith. We can talk all we want to about mission and ministering and deeply caring about these things, but if we are to be effective participants in it, we must grasp the nature of this mission. And I can guarantee you that the nature doesn't lie in political ladder climbing or the next election. Jesus didn't sit with the ostracized women or foreigners or the poor to be popular or to look good, but he came to plant seeds of a different kind of kingdom that would grow and continue aggressively dismantling the very systems which oppressed these people in the first place. Jesus' words, the narrative in Genesis 1 and 2, Paul's statements to the Corinthians, the text in Hebrews, can all serve as grounding tools for us, stories to be revisited again and again when our ego begins calling the shots. A reminder that firstly, good work is helped by many hands. Secondly, truly good things only grow and come to life because a living God makes those things grow. Although that may sting some people's pride, it also offers surprising relief and liberation from the pressure and fragility attached to trying to uphold one's personal image. This is what so many politicians miss, and what so many church administrators fail to grasp. There is a freedom in knowing that not only is it all about you, it's not all on you. And that we can also be assured that even if we don't receive all the recognition we'd hoped for, our efforts don't go unnoticed by the one whose opinion matters the most, the only one who ultimately rewards. And so it is truly correct that a faith community and society grows stronger when people are willing to forego personal legacy hunting and instead plant worthwhile seeds. We can find great freedom and meaning if we only dare to see beyond our limited time and invest in a longer game, in systemic issues. If we have the courage to plant a tree we won't sit in the shade of. Thank you for joining us for today's Housepod. We return next week with another episode and a brand new topic. Until then, may the God of the long game inspire vision in you.